Hello guys, welcome to iTutor Academy. In today's session, we will start with Unit 13, the subsection 11, Purpose and Objectives of Disciplinary Action. Okay, hope you are okay with the previous videos, and if you have any doubt, you can contact our contact number. So we will continue, and one more chapter is there in MMBC 002. After that, we will wind up this MMBC 002 course. So if you have any doubt in between, you can comment it on our comment box or you can contact our contact number. Okay, so let's start today's session. The purpose of discipline, according to Dessler 2001, is to encourage employees to behave sensibly at work, where being sensible is defined as adhering to rule and regulations. In an organization, rules and regulations serve about the same purpose that laws do in society. Discipline is called for when one of these rules or regulations is violated. The following are some of the purpose and objective of disciplinary action. The first one is to enforce rules and regulations and to punish the offender, to serve as an example to others to strictly follow rules, to ensure the smooth running of the organization and to increase working efficiency, to maintain industrial peace, to improve working relations and toleration, to develop a working culture which improves performance. Dessler opines that a fair and just discipline process is based on three foundations: rules and regulations, a system of progressive penalties, and an appeals process. So let us probe this a bit more. Dessler states that a set of clear rules and regulations is the first foundation. These rules address things like theft, destruction of company property, drinking on the job, and insubordination. The purpose of these rules is to inform employees ahead of time as to what is and is not acceptable behavior. This is usually done during the employee's orientation. So, right to take decisionary actions. Right to take decisionary action emanates from employer-employee relationship and is regulated by contract of employment, standing orders of the company, that is for workers, or conduct and discipline, that is appeal, and rules for supervisory staff of the organization. Promptness in disciplinary cases is essential. It has to be ascertained which disciplinary rules are applicable to the delinquent employee for taking action. And the next is disciplinary action procedure. To start with, based on any misconduct committed by the employee or complaint, a preliminary inquiry is called for. Then, disciplinary authority has to initiate action. The following authorities are laid by the organization for various levels of employees: disciplinary authority, appellate authority, reviewing authority. Stages of disciplinary proceedings are explained through flowchart. So you just go through this flowchart one by one. So you will get flowchart of disciplinary proceedings. Okay. And based on judicial pronouncement, elaboration procedure have been evolved which has to be followed to avoid infaminities in the disciplinary action. Various stages involved are briefly indicated as under: preliminary inquiry, framing and serving of charge sheet, holding of domestic inquiry, report of the inquiry officer, consideration of the report of the inquiry officer by disciplinary authority, order of punishment and its communication, and appeal. And issues of the charge sheet. Delinquent employee is to be issued a charge sheet, call him to submit his explanation within a specified period of time. This charge sheet should be drafted in a clear and unambiguous language so that the workman does not have any difficulty in understanding the charges that he has to answer. And wherever possible, the relevant clause of the company's standing orders should be mentioned in a charge sheet. If the charge related to an incident, the dates, time and place of the occurrence should be mentioned. Proper care should be taken in framing the charge sheet, for the validity of the punishment would depend on the inquiry of the misconduct mentioned in the charge sheet. The charge sheet should be in the local language. And second is suspension pending inquiry. In case where the charges leveled against a workman are of serious nature and it is considered by the disciplinary authority that his physical presence might endanger the safety of the workman, or if it is apprehended that he might intimidate others or tamper with the evidence, he may be suspended. During the period of suspension pending inquiry, the workman will get subsistence allowance as per rules. And a consideration of the explanation. After a charge sheet has been served on a workman for reply, he may submit his explanation, admitting the charges and requesting for mercy, or denying the charges and requesting for an inquiry, or not submitting any explanation at all, or requesting for more time to submit explanation. In a case where the workman admit the charge which is of a minor nature and begs for mercy, no inquiry is held and decision is taken accordingly on the charge sheet. And the next is notice for holding the inquiry. After consideration of the explanation of the charge sheeted workman, or when no reply is received within the specified time limit, the disciplinary authority should issue an order appointing an inquiry officer or an inquiry committee to hold the inquiry of the charge sheet. The inquiry officer can be an official of the company, or even consider or even or even an outsider, but care should be taken to appoint only such a person as inquiry officer who is neither a witness nor is personally interested in any way in the matter for which the charge sheet has been issued. It should also contain the name of the management representative. And next is holding of the inquiry. The object of holding an inquiry is to find out whether the workman is guilty of the charges leveled against him in the charge sheet or not. In doing so, the inquiry officer gives the workman a reasonable opportunity to defend himself by cross examining the witness, documentary evidence, exhibits produced against him, and by examining the witness, documentary evidence in his defense. The workman concerned can also make statement in his defense apart from what is stated in reply to the charge sheet. And next is the inquiry. On the appointed date and time fixed for the inquiry, the following person should be present apart from the inquiry officer. And presenting officer, he is the person who will lead the case from the management side by producing witness and relevant documentary evidence in supporting of the charge. He may himself be a witness, in which case he is first person to be examined. Delinquent employee. No inquiry can be said to have been held as per procedure in the absence of the charge sheeted employee. However, if he refused to take part in the inquiry after presenting himself, or when he does not report for the inquiry despite receiving the notice to him, the inquiry may proceed ex parte, provided in the notice of the inquiry a specific mention to that effect had been made. And representative of the delinquent employee. If the delinquent employee writes to the charge sheet or makes a subsequent frequent that he should be allowed to take a knowledgeable co-worker of his choice to assist him in the inquiry, the same should normally be allowed. In some companies, union committee member of the recognized trade union is allowed to attend an inquiry on the specific request of the workman to either assist him or play the role of an observer as per procedure. And the next is the procedure of inquiry. At the commencement of the inquiry, if the delinquent employee is present, the inquiry officer should record the date, time, and place of inquiry, names of the person present, and obtain their signature on the order sheet. Thereafter, he should proceed as follows: and read out and explain the charges and the reply of the charge sheet to delinquent employee and get his confirmation to that effect. In case the delinquent employee has not accepted the charge in reply to the charge sheet, he should be asked if he pleads guilty of the charges. If the charges are admitted, that should be recorded and the signature of all concerned with the date and should be taken, and explain to the delinquent employee concerned the procedure to be followed in the inquiry wise that the presenting officer will produce witness or documentary evidence or exhibits in supporting of the charge, and delinquent employee will have opportunity to cross examine and also cross-examine them, and the delinquent employee will have further opportunity to make statement if any in his defense. At any stage of the inquiry officer can seek clarification from any witness or the delinquent employee by puffing questions to him, and the witness in support of the charges are to be examined one by one in the presence of the delinquent employee. The charge-sheeted workman is to be given an opportunity to cross-examine management's witnesses. In case he declined to cross-examine any witness, an endorsement to that effect should be recorded by the inquiry officer. The delinquent employee should be asked to produce his own witness on one by one, and the presenting officer will be allowed to cross-examine them, and one each page of the inquiry proceedings, the nature with the date of the charge sheeted workman, his representative, if any, the concerned witness, and the management representative should be taken. Inquiry officer will sign on each page of the proceedings after endorsing that the statement has been recorded by him and explained to the parties in their language before they were asked to sign. An ex parte inquiry. If on the day fixed for the inquiry, the delinquent employee does not turn up, an ex parte inquiry may be held by following the usual procedure. In such an inquiry, the presiding officer has to lead the evidence against the charge-sheeted workman. The inquiry officer, by putting question to the witness, gets faces to come to reasonable conclusion about the validity or otherwise of the charges. The inquiry report is there under ex parte inquiry. After the inquiry is over, the inquiry officer makes an appreciation of the evidence on record and come to his conclusion. And final decision of the disciplinary authority. The inquiry report is submitted to the disciplinary authority before he takes a decision on the finding of the inquiry officer. He is required to furnish a copy of the inquiry officer's report to the concerned employee. And minor punishments are there, that is warning or censure, fine, keeping the provisions of section 8 of Payment of Wages Act in view, and withholding of increment either with the cumulative effect or non-cumulative effect, and major punishment, demotion, discharge and dismissal. A letter communicating the order of discharge or dismissal should set out clearly the charges proved against the delinquent employee and the date from which the order is to become effective. And next is appeal. An employee can appeal against an order imposing upon him any of the penalties. And at last, there is a conclusion. Conclude, it is employer's right to direct its internal administration and maintain discipline. However, before passing an order of discharge or dismissal, the employer has to arrange for a fair and proper inquiry in consonance with the principle of natural justice. And in today's context, no employer can discharge or dismiss a delinquent workman even for a serious misconduct without following an elaborate procedure for taking disciplinary action. An employer can be guilty and penalized if the adjudicator finds that there was want of good faith, or there was victimization or unfair labor practices, or the management was guilty of a basic error or violation of a principle of natural justice, or on the grounds that the finding was completely baseless or perverse. And next one is legal provision relating to discharge or dismissal. That is under Industrial Dispute Act 1947. Individual dispute, that is, individual disputes are not covered by the Industrial Dispute Act 1947, except disputes of an individual workman relating to his discharge, dismissal, retrenchment, and termination from service, which is to be considered as an industrial dispute under Act, that is Section 2A. And next is prior to introduction of Section 2A. In 1971, an employer could discharge or dismiss a workman for this misconduct as per standing orders after following the procedure for conducting a domestic enquiry. The management's decision could not have been challenged before labor court if enquiry was fairly and properly conducted as per the principle of natural justice. Okay, so the court could not be interfere with the quantum of punishment. However, court has powers to interfere only when there was want of good faith, or there was victimization or unfair labor practice, or violation of principle of natural justice, or findings was completely baseless or perverse. And possession under Section 2A. Section 2A was inserted in the Act by the Industrial Dispute Amendment Act 1971 with effect from 15/12/1971. The statement of objects and reasons specifically referred to the decision of Supreme Court in India Iron and Steel Cooperative Limited and another versus their workmen. It also referred to recommendation number 119 of the International Labour Organization that a worker aggrieved by the termination of his employment should be entitled to appeal against the termination, among others, to a neutral body such as an arbitrator, a court, an arbitration committee, or a similar body. Effect of Section 11A. Prior to the introduction of Section 2A or 11A, it's called 2A, the tribunal had no power to interfere with the finding of misconduct recorded in the domestic inquiry unless there exists one or other infirmities pointed out by the Supreme Court in the case of Indian Iron and Steel Cooperative Limited. Okay. Under this section, for the first time, power has been given to tribunal to satisfy itself whether misconduct is proved. This is particularly so regarding even finding arrived at by an employer in an inquiry properly held. And next is Industrial Dispute Amendment Act 1982. An employer may be held guilty of unfair labor practice in case court finds dismissal discharge is to be on account of victimization, not in good faith, in utter disregard of natural justice, for patently false reason for disproportionate punishment. Apart from the remedy of reinstatement of workmen, the employer is liable for the penalty under Section 254. So summary of this chapter is the first part of this unit we have discussed about grievance handling. A grievance is a form of discontent or dissatisfaction. There are several reasons for this, and the grievance has several adverse effects on production, employer, and individual employee. There are several channels for discovering grievance. Machinery for grievance handling procedures has been described, and model grievance handling procedure has been provided at the end of the unit. The second part of the unit examined various aspects of discipline. We have seen that discipline is by and large a result of the culture and the pattern of authority or power that are available in an organization. There are specific purpose and objectives of the disciplinary action in an organization. A typical disciplinary action procedure has 10 steps. There are few legal provisions relating to discharge or dismissal under Industrial Act 1947. Okay, there is self-assessment questions also related to this chapter. Discuss the causes and effect of grievance. Briefly outline the features of a grievance procedure and the steps involved in it. And why should organizations have a formal grievance procedure? Explain the meaning and concept of discipline with the examples, and describe briefly the stages of disciplinary action procedure. Okay, all from this unit only. You can answer yourself. If you have any doubts, you can contact our contact number. Okay, thank you so much.